And put that up on screen. Flip it over. There we go. Okay. And I'll take the standby off. Well, I guess what I ought to do is go ahead and put up the credits. And I understood that we had some people show up last week. I believe that was Ed. Sorry about that. We weren't here last week. Was it last week you came or 2 weeks ago? Last week. Well, I'm sorry about that. We're here today, gone tomorrow. We won't be here next week. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Next week, they're going to be doing an event, I believe, for the police officers in the area, some kind of training session. So we'll be back in 2 weeks, and I'll get Lou to send out a message. I won't send one out about next week unless we need to, but there will be some videos that we'll probably put up online next week, some stuff about UPSs, some cases, and some of the things we're going to get in today I think ought to be strangely interesting. Laptops, desktops, and Windows. Good time to buy, good time to wait on building, and also a good time to watch the feathers fly while Microsoft and AMD and everybody else is doing this. I tell you, I think there's going to be a lawsuit over that. And I got to tell you, Ed, the email you sent me had everything just very succinctly about what's going on with Windows with the 1.2.3, with the bills, even Microsoft and AMD doing this, and I think it all rests right at the foot of Microsoft with all their shenanigans. Yeah. It's got to stop, and it's funny because it takes me back to what Milt said. There's a way to keep Windows from rebooting. Now, if Joe was here, he'd tell us the nitty-gritty on how to do this, and I got to thinking about it. You know, used to we did this, and I don't know why we're not doing it now, but all we have to do is block access through the firewall. Until that application, you ain't getting through the firewall. But as that goes round and round, if you read the article, and I'm going to go over to Build or Buy, let me go over here to computer number 1, and I'm going to go down here to our website, and I'll go down to talking points, and this is from Ed in Computer World. So I'll hold down the control key and click on this number 5 from Ed Hansen, Computer World. Microsoft yanks buggy Windows meltdown Spectre patches for AMD computers. Well, it's not just AMD, it's also affecting some Intel machines, and apparently it's some Intel machines that may have an AMD video card in it. Now, this meltdown Spectre apparently is some kind of a memory corruption problem. So for whatever it's worth, what's going on, if you get to the very bottom of the article, while everybody's pointing fingers, and you see the different builds of Windows that's got this problem that's affected, as we go through this, it talks about the antivirus software that's also causing these blue screens. And this lingering problem in this testing, it may work out in the end that if you don't have this registry key, you may not get any updates at all, period. And let's see, where is that? Yeah, here it is. Let me zoom in on that and catch the nutshell of this. Since all of Microsoft's patches are now cumulative, except the Windows 7 and 8.1 security only manually downloaded patches, that means those who don't pay for their antivirus product or otherwise get thrown under the antivirus bus won't get any more Windows patches. And if you read back through the story, what that's about, if you'll notice the paragraph above it, there's a registry key that's required to be set. If that registry key is not set, then you will not get any more updates from Microsoft. That might be a good idea. That could be a big plus. So apparently, Ed, you were affected?
Yeah, I worked on.
Can we get a mic, please, on Ed so we can hear him?
Absolutely.
Thank you. We'll flip that over while I go over here and see if I
Ed.
can get a camera on
Ed.
on Ed.
Ed.
Here we go, Ed. All yours.
Yeah,
Now remember, the article says on machines that are 9 years or older. So was this a laptop or a desktop?
desktop, 2006, we built it here.
Interesting.
And it was my Windows 10 desktop.
Was it a Phenom processor, or do you remember?
I don't remember. It was a Gigabyte motherboard and an AMD processor.
And worked. Everything was fine
Everything was fine.
until this.
turned it on one morning, blue screen. So I tried a number of routines to try and get rid of the blue screen. Nothing worked. I went back to restored a backup I had made in late December and booted up. Everything worked just fine.
And see, you know what you're doing. Can you imagine someone that doesn't know what they're doing? Someone who doesn't do what we advocate about cloning, imaging, and backup?
Yeah. But before I did a restore, I went ahead and backed up, made an image of all three of my partitions anyway.
Covered your assets.
And it worked because I could retrieve files even if from those backups, those images, even if I could not boot from the system that was updated.
What day did this affect you? What day did this start? What day did it affect you?
About the 3rd or the 4th.
3rd or the 4th. What day was that on? Was that a Tuesday?
I don't remember for sure. But I worked on it 2 or 3 days off and on trying to make sense out of it. But as soon as I went back to that November backup image file and restored my C partition,
And
everything came up just normally.
but did it go back in the loop again to try to put the patch back in?
Yeah, Microsoft did. And, you know, I was waiting for it to finish installing. And guess what? Here comes the blue screen again when it quit installing. So that told me that it had to be one of those updates.
And you know, you think about it, over the years we've always talked about the driver issues. It's been network drivers, video drivers, which then affects also audio because of HDMI. But to make your computer go blue screen, that's not acceptable. Now, can you imagine if that's a business compounded, having this kind of issue? The first thing you're going to think, okay, what would the user do to the machine?
Yeah.
I mean, that could set a company back quite a bit. So I'll be surprised if there's not some lawsuits over this.
Well, my approach right now is to wait another day, maybe make sure Microsoft has really done their thing and kill that particular update that's causing the problem. Then I'm going to do the November restore again.
Yeah.
And let it go ahead and do all the updates except the one that's faulty. And
What antivirus software are you using?
Avira.
Avira?
Yeah.
So I wonder if Avira, because this article also mentions a site that keeps track of all these applications. I wonder if Avira will be able to set the switch to let this happen. Don't know. Worth looking at. But I want you to know that article you had was the best of all that I saw, because everybody else just kind of had you running in a tizzy, trying to understand what's going on and why this is happening. It shouldn't be happening. Now, there's another article I read that I couldn't find that I want to get a link up to that talked about, this goes back to the kernel, that they're going to have to rewrite Windows. So is this going to be a new Windows 10, or a different? Is this going to be their chance to do a leap? And they would also have to do a rebuild on Linux, right down to the kernel. So they said it might run slower, but it would be more secure, so this couldn't happen again. But what gets me, it's a memory corruption. Well, when memory gets corrupted, usually the machine goes bonkers. So I don't fully understand it, but I know I don't like it.
The blue screen said that it couldn't boot because one of the devices that it needed was either not working or it was corrupted.
Almost sounds like a driver. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Has anybody else been affected by this?
Not that I know of yet.
That you know of yet? Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I have some older machines that fortunately are off and have been off for quite a while, and I'm glad of that. But there's somebody else that's normally here that's not here today, and that's Jeannie. I think Jeannie has a Phenome processor, 10 years old or whatever. She's getting ready to start working on a new project, and I'm eager to help her with that project. Her project, she's going to teach English to Chinese. So I asked her for some specs on how they were going to do all this. She said, well, I'll have to see if I can get in touch with somebody and find out. Because I said, are you going to be using Skype? You know, what are you going to use to do this with? Based on the age of her machine, it should be okay to do that. But because of this problem, the first time she turns it on, she does not clone, image, and backup. So she's going to be pretty upset.
You should learn how to clone.
Well, you know, we've done that in detail, and what we did last month, I'm going to keep referring to that because I went very methodically through that with the 3 different ways: the solution from Microsoft, the solution from HP, and then the solution we always use from Macrium. I thought it was very complete. Very few people have looked at it, but I thought it was very complete. So instead of us the first month doing that, I'm going to refer to that, unless we get another laptop like Manolo. Manolo bought a new laptop. So if we have a chance to work with a different laptop, I'd like to take that aspect of it. Now, this is an HP. So far, so good. I'm going to change out the antivirus solution anyway. But if anybody's interested in buying a laptop, right now is a great time to buy a laptop, unless you want a real high-end laptop. And I'll say, when you're buying a laptop, you got to be irrespective. Know your specs. You can't be looking at price and brand. Those two things are in your mind, but shouldn't be in the back of your mind. Number one should be the specs. Now, this issue with this virus, Philip, were you hit by this virus? Can we get a mic over there on Philip, please? I want to flip over because I'm going to go flip that camera around. And then I want us to get back to computers, because there's 4 trade shows going on right now, and it's that's an interesting game we need to look at.
No, I'm not really.
You haven't been hit by it?
No.
Well, the article you sent me I thought was interesting. That was Reuters, I believe.
Yeah, I just, in a way, I'm affected because my desktop was still on 1703 instead
Okay.
of 1709.
Well,
And-
this also affects some 1703 builds as well.
Well, when I look at my update, I saw that the number, the KB number on that update is different than the one they were talking about
Okay.
by 1 number.
By one number.
And I'm assuming that was because my machine was 1703.
Well, could be.
Because they, I saw I can't find the article anymore. There's 4 different KB updates for different, I think for different processor or whatever. I don't remember. But
You will remember if you get hit. So I hope you don't.
Yeah,
How old is that computer? That's
couple years old.
Well,
It's
if
the Intel, the i7 6700.
Do you have an Intel video card? Excuse me. And with that Intel processor, do you have an AMD video card in there?
No,
Okay, then you should be okay.
I have NVIDIA.
NVIDIA. Well, based on what we're knowing about this right now, you should be okay. It's still an FYI that we all should be aware of, and if something happens, not to freak out. But it just emphasizes, drives home the fact, clone, image, and backup is something we all got to do. Oh, and Happy New Year, everybody. Glad you're here today. Appreciate everybody coming. But it's,
Well, one thing that I tried to do, since I was still on 1703, maybe I thought I should upgrade it to the 1709. I did it manually. It messed up my machine.
messed up your machine in what way? Nothing worked?
That upgrade that was there before was gone. I mean, the pad for the Spectre was gone. And then when I tried to install it again, it refused to do it.
It may have refused because of compatibility issues. It's funny you mention that. The main machine that I use, email, one, and the second machine that I use mainly for doing capturing for educational purposes, those 2 machines are both FX machines. It was a long time before they finally went to build 1709 on those 2 machines. In fact, one of them showed, I don't know, half a dozen times it failed to install, and for rightly so, I guess, something with the processor, because everything else in there was pretty standard equipment. Unless it was the chipset, because this seems to be an issue with chipsets. So, you know, I always say the chipsets rule, but some of the chipsets they don't like. Now, AMD says their stuff is documented, and the documentation Microsoft has. Microsoft says the documentation they provided us was not complete. So, you know, again, this left-right, we didn't have a problem until Microsoft sent this patch down. So, Microsoft is not going to want this to go to court. If someone files a lawsuit, they're going to want to settle, because public opinion says we're out for blood. So I hope it doesn't affect anybody else up here, but that machine, has it been cloned, imaged, or backup so that you're safe?
Thank God I did.
You what?
Yeah, I did.
You did, okay.
So I just replaced the hard drive.
See, that's a good time when you replace a hard drive, because there you've got a backup. Pop a new hard drive in, all you got to do is copy your data over. Install your applications, you're up and running. And that's something we used to advocate every 6 months. So like when Manolo got that first computer, he said it's not fast enough. I said, if you want fast, I always say with a laptop, you know, pick the top 5 things you're interested in. You change one thing, changes everything. What I was looking for was a big screen. Turned out the screen was too big for him. I said, okay, based on all the research I've been doing at Costco, and I'm going to do the same thing with some other vendors. If we're looking for fast, number one, let me back up. There's 3 speeds for a drive. It can be a spinning drive, which is about 150, 175 megabytes. It can be an SSD, which is around 530 megabytes. Or it can be an NVMe drive, which is the stick of chewing gum, which can be 3,500 megabytes. If you want fast, that's as fast can be right now. So if that's our number one requirement, if you're looking at a laptop at Costco, you've got to drop down to a smaller screen. Manolo wanted a smaller screen anyway, so I said, no sweat, that's a deal. And that laptop at that time, I think it was Monday when I found it, the deal went off on Tuesday, and that was around $1,000 or $1,100, and that was $200 off. Now, as of Sunday, if I were looking in 3 price categories at a laptop at Costco, which would be around $800, say around $1,100, and around $1,600, all 3 of those in that price range would all be Dell as of Sunday. If I went in, and that's on the website. Now, if I went into the store, as I looked and evaluated, the computer that I chose that I thought would be the best value turned out to be a Lenovo. So what you see on the website and what you see in the store is completely different. And it changes, because I've been going through this every 2 or 3 days evaluating laptops, trying to find what's the best. So when I found that one for you, knowing that you wanted something that booted fast, it happened to be a Dell, but what I was looking for was an NVMe drive. Now, if I were, and that's what you got, and the only thing you don't like about it is the voice, and as Jack said, you can turn that voice off. When I did the evaluation and unboxing and setup on this HP Envy 17T, I did the same thing. I don't want to hear that. And this kind of balances against what Jeannie Reed is going to need, because she has to be able to wear headphones so she can hear what's going on in a microphone. Laptops used to have 2 inputs, one for headphones and one for microphone. Now it's a dual purpose port where it's either or. So if either or is all that's available, then that change one thing changes everything. That changes the kind of computer we're looking at. So what I've got to decide as I try to help her, once I have the specs on what she wants to do, are we going to use a desktop or are we going to do a laptop? My preference is a desktop, but I need to see how that's going to play out with what she wants to do. Is she going to do Skype? Yes, ma'am. Can we get a mic over there, please? We'll come back to you. Yes, ma'am. He's a-coming. Let me swing this camera around so we can see you. Got you.
Can you get an adapter or a adjustment thing that you plug in that will have 2 jacks out of it for mic and here and
For a microphone
recorders?
and for headphones?
Headphones?
I would think you could, but I'm not aware if that's possible. Do you know, Dwayne?
Or Bluetooth?
I don't know. I think Bluetooth probably would be an option.
Right.
Can handle both.
And if you have a laptop, you will have Bluetooth, so that would be the solution, where you should be able to use Bluetooth for the headphones so that your plug will be for your microphone. Now, with that said, on a laptop, you normally have your camera and you've got a microphone built in. So depending on what kind of headset she's going to work with, see, I don't know enough. All I know is she's going to teach English to Chinese over the internet. So there's a whole lot of information that we still need, because depending on how she does this, I might recommend a different camera than what comes on a laptop. All these cameras are like 720. If she wants to stream at 1080, then we're looking at a different camera, an external camera. So I need more information, more input on her specs. But anyway, back to the issue with laptops. If somebody were interested, say, in an HP laptop, the only way you can buy an HP laptop with an NVMe drive in it is to go through HP's website and drill down and build one of those machines and say, that's what I want. Because from what I've been able to ascertain, if you buy an HP Envy from Costco, these are neutered machines. They can only do so much. Neutered in the fact that, okay, I go to, say, Crucial's website, and I interrogate this machine, and Crucial says, here's the things I can do to upgrade it. Well, based on the research I've done, I don't think I can do the upgrades they claim I can. For example, I've got a spinning hard drive in here, so I know that's SATA 6 gigabit transfer rate. So I can go from a spinning drive, 150 megabytes, to an SSD, which would be around 530 megabytes. But I cannot, and I may be able to put an M.2 drive in there, but I can't figure out if I can put an NVMe drive in there. I don't think I can. I think they have neutered that. They've disabled that capability. So until I actually physically open it, I don't know that for a fact. But I do know if that's a requirement and that's the brand I want, I could do it through HP's website. So I'm sharing all these things with you to give you some idea of what you're looking at. For example, that's just one vendor, Costco. I like Costco because, like Manolo, the first one we got, $800, that was bang for the buck in that price range, but it wasn't fast enough. So he took it back. Costco says, you don't want it? 30 days, no sweat. You buy a laptop or any kind of computer from anybody else, unless you got a good reason that it's broken or something's wrong with it, once you buy it, you own it. So that's the wonderful thing about going to Costco. If you buy something and it's not what you want, you can take it back. And the one you got right now, I think, is where you want to stay. It's got the right size screen. It's got the right speed on it. That voice, you can turn that off so you don't have that talking to you. For some people, that toy is, maybe advantageous. For most of us, I think it's annoyance. For me, it was an annoyance. For you, it's an annoyance. But if anybody's looking in the price ranges right now that I mentioned, Dell has all three of them right now at Costco. And if you want an NVMe drive at Costco, it's going to be a Dell. Can we get a microphone? He's coming. Oh, you got it? Good. Yes, Manolo.
If you buy a computer from Micro Center and you don't like it, you take it back, they won't take it back, huh?
Try.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Ask them about their return policy.
Okay.
Unless something's wrong with it.
You got it, huh?
Yeah, unless something's wrong with it, you bought it. You own it.
Okay. And then, before I forget, I want to thank you again for recommending the computer. Appreciate it.
Well, anybody that's interested and wants my 2 cents worth, give me some ideas of kind of what you're looking at for, and that's what we did with yours. And when I stumbled on that, I said, we got to hit that. We got to be on that like flies on honey.
Thanks
because
again.
That was a Monday deal that went off on Tuesday, and that next day it was going to be $200 more.
Yeah,
and
that's $200 instead of 2 cents. 2 cents worth. Okay.
Change one thing, changes everything. We'd be looking at a different computer. So it's really fascinating how this stuff runs. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, when I bought this Dell computer in the middle of, or my stuff at Micro Center in the middle of July or June, they allowed a return policy. So
who was that through?
Micro Center.
They let you?
Yes, but it was like 15 days or something like that. It wasn't terribly long, but there was a return policy.
15 days is good. Mm-hmm. Costco, it's 30 days. Costco charges nothing, but Micro Center charges how much for a restocking fee? 10%, a percentage. So a restocking fee. Amazon has that, Micro Center has that, everybody that I know has that. So it's good to know those policies. You know, there's some things, like I said, I would never buy a hard drive at Newegg, and I have come really close because of some bad experiences I've had. If Costco ever starts selling motherboards, then I'm hooked. Because I've had some bad motherboards before, and because of that, I buy them on Amazon because they're easy to get rid of. Some of the other vendors, 30 days. I mean, even some of, when we used to do some stuff through wholesale, you got 30 days with the vendor, and that's it. After that, you're dealing with the manufacturer. And dealing with the manufacturers, Costco is so easy to deal with. It's just, you have to know the ins and outs of it. So if somebody wants to buy a laptop, now's a good time, unless you want a high-end laptop, and that's getting ready to change, because I made a comment one day that in that price range of about $1250, $1275, I think the Asus Zen had it. Well, there's a Dell right now in that price range that comes pretty darn close. But when you look at $1,600, which is also a Dell at Costco, for $1,500, you can get straight from Asus, the Asus Republic of Gamers Strix, that has a desktop Ryzen processor. Okay, there's two laptops right now that have a Ryzen processor. There's the Ryzen laptop processor, and then there's the Ryzen desktop processor. HP has, I forget the model, that's got a Ryzen 5 in it. Something to think about. Now, anybody that's buying a laptop, whether it's whatever you want, and I say look at the specs, for example, like the one Manolo has had, I was looking at the processor and I said, okay, the 8550, I know that's got 4 cores. Now, whether you buy an HP or a Dell, whether you're looking at Intel, say, you've got the i7 or an i5, either one of those, you want to make sure you get the most cores possible, because either one of those, you might end up with a processor that's got 2 cores instead of 4 cores. In this day and time, I want as many cores as I can get for processing. Jack? Let's get a mic on Jack. He's coming. Let me swing around and we'll get that camera over there on you. Yes, Jack?
Could you reiterate what you just said about, I thought I understood you to say they had 2 processors, one for desktop. Ryzen has 2 processors, one for desktop, one for laptop.
Yes.
And then you said, but HP offers the something Ryzen.
HP has the laptop processor.
Okay, so it is the laptop processor.
It's a laptop processor.
I thought you were offering a third choice there.
I wish. There's getting ready to be a third choice. There's an i9 rumored to be coming out. And you know what the price of that processor is? It's obscene. But there's going to be an i9 laptop claiming early in 2018. Now, there's 4 trade shows going on right now. CES, NAMM, Consumer Electronics Music Show, the Consumer Electronics Show, NAMM, the National Association of Music Manufacturers. There's a game show right now, I believe it's called GDC, Game Developers Conference. And then there's a 4th show going on in, I just got an email from Panasonic in the Netherlands for broadcasting.
So the upcoming third choice will not be an AMD though?
As far as I'm aware of right now, no. What I'm looking for the other shoe to drop is someone to build a laptop with a Threadripper in it. The Threadripper. AMD has the Ryzen processor, and we can go through that because the prices on all that have just fallen. Whereas, for example, this Ryzen that I built up here was a $500 processor. That processor is now $350. So there's the Ryzen 7, there's the Ryzen 5, there's a Ryzen 3 below that. Above that is the Threadripper, and the Threadripper has 3 categories, the lowest one of which also is at a reduced price. But even the top of the line Threadripper, there's some good prices, but that's a desktop processor. What I want to see is somebody build a Threadripper with that desktop processor, because you're talking about a workstation computer.
What was the one I was just reading about that they're talking about at CES that's
Dell?
It's Intel with AMD graphics on the same chip.
I believe it's Dell. I got an email from that from Dwayne. Thank you, Dwayne. Steroids kicking every once in a while. Did you have a comment a while ago you were going to share with us, Dwayne, about that? Can we get a mic over there on Dwayne?
Well, yeah, I've got a mic.
Okay.
On laptops, probably is a good time to buy Dell because, as you've probably seen, the Dell is upgrading their XPS line and redoing a major revision,
And see-
making Jack's laptop obsolete.
Yes.
And see, that's a good point. The
I'm
reason,
so damn jealous I could scream.
well, think about this. There's always something bigger and better, and, you wait, and you can wait forever for the right thing. But that's why the Dells are such a good deal right now, because they're revamping all the stuff. They want to get rid of what they got because they got some new stuff coming out, and one of the new Dells that they're talking about at CES is a big deal. So I can't help but wonder if Dell is the one coming out with this new i9 in a laptop. It's going to be obscenely expensive. If it is, it would probably be like an Alienware, since that's their high-end stuff. But time will tell. But right now is an exciting time. So if I were going to buy a laptop, now's a good time to buy. If I were going to build, I would wait, because the processor prices have come down on the Ryzens, and there's a new chipset coming out, which is curious because this is a chipset problem, but there's a new chipset coming out for the Threadripper motherboards. I've been waiting because there's certain components I want to get, and there's certain components I need to get at the same time. In other words, I don't want to be sitting on a motherboard waiting on a processor and vice versa. So I've been going through some of the components, and one of the things I've been looking for was a higher end power supply for the Threadripper because of some other things I want to do to it. As I went through the different vendors looking for, when I say higher end, a higher wattage power supply, nobody had them. All sold out. I can get a 750 and 850, but I can't get a 1,000 watt. I couldn't find a 1,000 watt or a 1,200 watt. All sold out. And I thought, well, if the computer business is doing bad, where's all the power supplies going? Somebody's buying power supplies, which means somebody's building computers. And these aren't run-of-the-mill computers they're building if they're putting a 1,000 watt power supply in. So then I get an email from Amazon, and of course they're out of stock on them, but they got this really, really good price. I'm saying, okay, I'm an idiot, I'll go for it. So I went ahead and bought one. Even with the tax, it's still better than anybody else has got for that power supply. But that's just one component. I'm not going to build a machine until I have everything on par. If your wife finds out that's your girlfriend calling, that'll be interesting.
Especially if his wife's watching.
Yeah, if she's watching. I'm so bad. I always tease Ray about that whenever I see him. I talk to him about, does your wife know that you're out with your girlfriend? Melanie will say, Gil, you're just a troublemaker. Oh. I love the joke she sent us that time about the dog, but I digress. Anyway, as far as to reiterate about this, again, if you're going to buy a laptop, now's a great time. If you're looking for a high-end, the best one we've got right now is probably the Asus. But even it, as good as it is, because it's got a Ryzen desktop processor in it, it's got problems. Short battery life. Graphics are okay. But now that CES is coming out, we need to be watching what the new stuff is coming out. There's going to be some new things. Of course, the prices are going to be a little bit higher. But remember, we've been through Christmas. You got to look at this historically. So they come out with this new stuff in January, but it doesn't actually hit the market until February because they give you January to get rid of whatever you bought that you don't want. So the new stuff comes out February, March. So if anybody's going to buy a laptop and you're not doing it right now, I'd give it a couple of months. Probably after the end of the quarter, first quarter, beginning of second quarter. We'll see how that plays out. Now, for anybody else that's doing Windows, hate it, love it, whatever, we have to deal with Windows 10, so we're going to have to work through it. And I've got several talking points. You got another one? Yes, sir, Dwight.
Have you talked about the Windows update breaking the AMD?
Yes. Yes. Oh, you weren't here when we did that.
No, I got here a little late.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'll tell you my solution, which
Yes.
my daughter's machine crashed.
And I appreciate you sending that. So she got affected. So that means she has a processor that's older than 2009.
That's correct. She gets the hand-me-downs from our house.
But that's still a good machine.
It is. It's working fine. Anyway, her machine crashed, so we got into, the advanced repair function. Went into System Restore.
And?
It showed a System Restore point where the update was downloaded but not installed. So, restored the machine, comes up beautifully, Then I said, okay, well, let's test it. Go ahead and reboot the machine.
And that's where you got you.
Then it crashes again, so we just repeated the process. The machine is now on, it's staying on, and it's working fine. And of course, Microsoft has suspended the updates on those machines now. And the machine is not trying to reboot, so we're fine. But now I'm going to have to figure out how to go in and get rid of that downloaded update that's on the machine. And I think there's a folder in Windows that holds these updates, and I think it's going to be a matter of going in and deleting that. And then when Microsoft figures out how to correct it, then it'll start updating the machine again.
There's an article that I put a link up on BuilderBuy that I'll mention right quick. I've got it up here on this computer. Let me go back over and zoom out of this. I got this from Ed, and I think it's probably one of the best we've got. It's link number 5. Computer World. Microsoft yanks buggy Windows Meltdown Spectre patch for AMD computers. And if you go through this and look at the different builds, the crux of this, according to what they Microsoft claim, and we zoom back in on that, there's going to be a registry key that has to be set by the antivirus program. If that key is not set, there will be no more updates, period. And this article is one of the best I've seen. No registry key, no patch. So whatever your antivirus is, and
there is no antivirus. It's Windows Defender.
You're using what Windows 10 has.
Yep.
You might want to read that article.
Okay. Yeah, there's much talk about that, but that doesn't seem to have anything to do with the basic problem that it's just bricking these machines. But that's what worries me. Microsoft will come out with a corrected patch, but it's not going to tell you how to get rid of the old.
Now, see, you're fortunate that you had a restore point, because that's been one of the issues I've read. There's been no restore point.
Well, but my daughter didn't do anything. In other words, Windows Update created that restore point. She didn't create it.
Has she installed any new applications lately?
No, she's done nothing. So that somehow was created by the update. That was just fortuitous. Yeah.
And everybody that I've read about says there is no restore point, and that's why they can't get out of it.
Yes, I agree. I read that too, and that's why I was surprised.
You're lucky.
Yeah, very lucky.
So if you can go wipe those updates out, you're going to be good to go.
Yep.
But until this registry key gets set, there shouldn't be any more updates once you wipe that out, which could be a good thing.
Yes, could be.
Because that has been so annoying. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Sorry you weren't here a while ago, but I really thought that was the first thing we ought to get into, because it's, as I said, and I'll reiterate, it's just a matter of time before the lawsuits start swinging, and that's not one I think Microsoft would want to come to fruition. I think they'd want to settle out of court. So, oops. They're not paid for yet, so I'm paying for them slowly. They were expensive. It's only $4,000. So back over to the talking points on BuilderBuy. I've got the links up that Dwayne sent me, and I want to tell you guys, I appreciate all the stuff you guys send. It was coming in so fast. For a while, I wasn't sure I was going to get this all done. There's about 50 different items up there, but I did. So I'm going to go to the bottom of this and work through some of these things. And I was in hopes Robert Collier was going to be here, because he had some of the same stuff, but he's not. As we go through this, I got to mention this as I think of it. Our screen we're using right here, this is one of the things that's been announced at CES. Our screen right here is 150-inch diagonal. 150-inch. Can you imagine a display that's 148-inch? There's been one announced. Now, I don't know the price. As they say, if you got to ask, you can't afford it. But I'm really curious that they've now come out with a 148-inch, because I remember when we used to go to Comdex, and one time we went into one of the conference rooms, and they had a wall, and this is back before LCDs were even anything. They had a wall that was a LCD monitor. They told us back then that it was like a $50,000 prototype. And now to be coming out with something like this, I'm just curious. So what we're going to be seeing is larger displays, thinner displays, I hope less expensive displays, and higher resolution, 8K. They're also talking about 8K at CES. So I had to mention that. Let's go back over here to the talking points. Cinema 5D, I've got them up for anybody that's into photography or videography, some of the trends. And that's always something I see is what we do with build or buy as the technology plays out. A lot of things that we mark, I feel like we're marking a point in time to see, okay, this is what's a big deal now, but as we look back, was it really? And as we compare to the next thing coming down the pike, because I always say a little bit of information is always beneficial. The more we know so we can make an informed decision, the better we go. We may not make use of all the technology we're looking at, but I want to look at it and see what it is so then I can step back and go, okay, well, how much technology do I need right now? Knowing what's getting ready to happen. For example, I've been waiting to build a Threadripper because I've been waiting on certain components. And now all of a sudden I've gotten wind that not only have the processors in the range below that and the Ryzens have come down, but there's a new chipset coming out. There's a problem with chipsets. I'm curious what we're going to get with a new chipset. So I like options because I don't have all my components yet. I'm willing to wait and see if some of the problems they've had with some of the motherboards for the Threadripper may be solved with the new chipset. So I'm looking at maybe 4 months. I'm good with that. I can wait. So if I was buying a laptop, I'd be really hard pressed not to do it based on what I know. Because even though I know an i9 is coming out, I know what that processor costs, and there's no way I'm going to build an i9 machine. There's no way I'm going to have a workstation class i9 machine. But if somebody comes out with a laptop like that, I'm watching. But I don't know it yet, but I'm watching. And something else that's kind of bugged me. Let's see, LG gets a jump on CES by announcing its 2018 smart TV lineup early. Digital Trends, AT&T is going to start doing their 5G rollout. You know, I got to mention this as a side note. All this fiber that's been installed in Houston, Texas, when the heck are they going to hook that stuff up so we can start using it? I mean, it is all over the place. And you'll see them like ants in an area, in a neighborhood, putting this stuff in and putting these flags out, going through and marking, but it's not hooked up to the point we can use it. You know, I wonder what they're waiting for. And that brings me to another point. How many of you own Comcast? Two things have happened. Did y'all see a rise in your bill right after the first of the year? Yeah. That sucked.
They announced it the last week in December, effective the first day of January.
Yeah. And then the second thing they did, and they said they're not charging extra for it, which is they increased the bandwidth. And said they're not charging extra for it. Okay, well, if you're not charging extra for it, then let's roll that bill back.
I'll give them back the bandwidth, they can have the bill.
That's right. I can do without that bandwidth if they'll roll that bill back. I need to do what Joe said and talk to customer retention. You know, if we can ever get AT&T to hook that fiber up and get some competition, it will just decimate Comcast. Time will tell. So there again is another technology we mark in time.
You really don't believe that. I mean, those two are thick as thieves when it comes to pricing.
We can dream. We can dream. You know, I had high hopes for Google at one time, but that's kind of bit the dust too. Something else that got my attention was, have you noticed all these drives like at Costco? You can pick up like a 2, 3, 4, 5 terabyte drive, but they're all USB 3. And I said, okay, this stuff needs to go to USB 3.1C, USB-C. Western Digital is now advertising and showing on their website just that. It's taken long enough, but there's a technology that I'm hoping we're going to start taking more advantage of, which we showed when we did the monitor. Remember we hooked up the monitor, we had Jim Fallon's laptop, and it was about one, is that connection for data or is that connection for devices? And then 3, once we figure out we can put a device on there, then we'll concern ourselves with bandwidth, whether it's generation 1 or generation 2 speeds, like some issues have been with Dell. So all this stuff is something in play, and something I want to take advantage of that I've done. They're now finally selling in Western Digital. I've got a link up that goes into their website. It's a matter of time before we start seeing the vendors that come out with that. Now, somebody else that we used to keep up with build or buy is CRN, Computer Reseller News. I have not of the last few years, and somehow I started getting stuff from them again. I've got a link up now, 7 things you need to know about Spectre and Meltdown security exploits. I've got several things in here from Computer Reseller News. I think it's interesting, I think it's relevant, and I like that overview to know what's going on. But I got to tell you, that article from Ed in Computer World just, I thought, nailed it. They did the best job of anybody, so I appreciate you sending that. And I've also got a link up here, number 39 in Talking Points. If you're interested in music, and this is a vendor to watch. Some vendors, you know, you like, FYI, let's wait and see what they do. And other vendors are like, oh, that's so-and-so, stay away from. I put this link up because this is a mark in time, and this is about from Music Radar. At the National Association of Music Merchandisers for 2018, Gibson, no show confirmed. The guitar maker instead focusing on consumer electronics show. I put this up because this is significant. Gibson bought Cakewalk. They killed Cakewalk. They're focusing on consumer products. They bought all this stuff from, I think it was LG. I would be very leery of buying anything from Gibson because I don't know what their intentions are. So I put that up just to remind everybody, FYI. And I've got some great stuff up here from Red Shark. One for LG's New Year resolution is 8K. And I've got a link up straight into B&H, B&H's Explora site. B&H is not only a great vendor to do business with, but they're a great vendor to watch for technology, the way they follow like CES and some of the other shows that go on. So I've got a link up for that. There's new cameras been announced. In fact, there's a new still camera coming out from Panasonic, the Lumix, and there's a link in the news that goes into Red Shark. And this new video camera, excuse me, it's a still camera, a mirrorless camera, but the focus of that camera is video. You can look through the links and you'll find it. And you know something else we have to think about? And I got this up from CRN, talking point number 36. This bug and these patches is not only affecting us on the desktop, but this is affecting everybody. Cisco's investigating dozens of routers, switches, servers that may be affected by Spectre Meltdown exploits. What about the server farms? I mean, this affects more than just us on the desktop. This is a big deal. And I hadn't really thought about it. So putting that link up, I think, is relevant. And I've never heard of a site called Frostbites, but they're the one, talking point number 34.
I wanted to ask you, that last one you just mentioned, does that imply that machines really have been infected? Or I thought that this was just at the talking stage.
They have the potential to become infected.
But nothing has been determined yet, they're just talking about it.
That's as far as I know. It's, and again, the issue is a memory corruption issue. My understanding, whenever memory corrupted, you got a blue screen. Whenever you had a memory corruption, you'd get a blue screen. So I don't know how they're having a memory corruption and able to exploit this issue through the chipset. I don't know enough about it. But because the potential exists, everybody's on edge about it. So it's something to be aware of. Yes, Jack. We'll get a mic on Jack. Where's the mic at? Raise a hand. There we go. He's coming at you. Camera's still on you, so I don't even have to move it. Yes, Jack.
Speaking of screen colors, if I may diverge just a wee bit.
Go ahead.
When Windows 10 boots or restarts, you get a splash on the background of either red or green. Is that right? Now I'm asking because I'm colorblind.
Well, I'm trying to think.
Red
No,
and green.
usually the splash you get is a graphic. Isn't that right? I don't remember a splash color. I'd have to reboot the computer to see because I don't sit with the computer when it boots. I'd walk off and do something else.
Well, I only tumbled to the fact, I think, last week that if it flashes red, you've got a problem when it's booting. And if it's green, you don't have. Anyway, I had a machine that I was working on, not my own, that for some reasons Defender in it will not restart antivirus protection.
Windows Defender.
Yeah. And the only reason I could come up with that it might not do that was that it already had an antivirus working, which I can find no sign of or anything. And I finally wound up giving up and installing Avast and letting Avast plug the hole, so to speak.
Did the problem go away?
Yeah, it now boots with a green flash instead of a red flash.
But you're colorblind.
Yeah, well, yeah. So
Yeah,
the,
well,
the,
that
the
was my
person
next question.
the person watching over my shoulder.
They made the comment.
Yeah.
I'll have to watch because I haven't paid any attention to that. Has anybody else seen that? A red or a green? You've never seen it? I'm going to watch the machine next time it boots, every one of them, because I'm curious.
I've noticed the color splash on several different machines, including my own from time to time. But I never knew there was a difference between them.
I'll have to watch. Philip, have you seen that? You haven't seen it? I'll start watching because I'm curious. Oh, something else, Manola, I want to ask you. Your screen, is it bright enough for you? Okay. Compared to the other screen that you had, was it bright enough? Were they about the same? The contrast, the brightness?
I guess so.
You don't remember?
I noticed that much of a difference.
Okay. I was just curious because I've had some dialogue with somebody asking about the laptop screens, and that's the most dialogue I've had with somebody about screens in a long time. We're talking, I think, about color matching as well, and I find it curious because for an $800 laptop, some of the questions they're asking, I would expect on a higher-end laptop, but it's still a fair question, so I wanted to ask you since I hadn't had a chance to look at it. Some of that stuff we may get into later. We've talked about it a little bit on monitors, but I've never talked about it this way with laptops. Have you guys watched any of the videos that we have up on YouTube? You watched them? Greg, have you noticed the one that's got the most hits? Well, I've been keeping track of that because I find it quite fascinating. And if you want to take a look sometime at the HP Envy laptop unboxing and setup that we did, it's got over 3,300 hits on it right now. Yeah, I know when we used to do the general meeting at the George R. Brown, in that sense, Build or Buy with what we're doing on YouTube is now more successful than all that work we did at Hal PC. Yeah, that blows my mind. We got down to where we had 350 people come to that meeting, and that meeting cost us $10,000 a month to do. 350 people. And there's a laptop, took me an afternoon. Now it's been up there for about a month, but over 3,300 people have looked at that. That just blows my mind. I think it's wonderful that we're reaching a lot of folks. That's the power of the internet. Okay, back over to the help section. Oh good, this is one I was in hopes I'd get to. Now, doggone it, Nick Streeter doesn't have his laptop with him today. Nick, you use Thunderbird? Do you have trouble sometimes seeing things? I know you don't like to add plugins because there's a plugin that lets you increase the size of the fonts. Do you have trouble seeing the text? You've never needed to increase the font size? Well, then I won't bother telling you about it. For those of you that use Thunderbird, there's a plugin that may or may not work, and I found this to be an issue. On a machine, that plugin that lets you set the fonts, when it didn't work, I did some research and figured out how to do that. I can show you, I can tell you about it, but if nobody's having a problem, I'll just say, take a look at that link, number 35, Mozilla Support, Thunderbird Support Forum. How can I increase the inbox pane font? It's pathetically small, and the theme font size changer does not work with Thunderbird. It's not just that version, but other versions. And I have no way to figure out why one version on one machine works and why that same version on another machine did not. But using that solution will. And what you have to do, it's three things. One, you figure out where your user profile is at. In that folder, you create a subfolder with a lowercase, call it Chrome. Inside of that folder, you put a text document. It's something.css. And there's text you put in that names the font size. You run through those 3 things, it shows you how. There's nothing you have to write manually other than changing the font size. When you close Thunderbird and call it back up, it'll set it and it works. That way you can do it without any plugins. If you need to do that sometime, we can do it when you have your machine. Now, I bring an extra keyboard and mouse. I didn't know I was going to start bringing an extra laptop. So, you got your pad? Glad you're protected. Now, this next link, number 33, again, this is a piece of technology that marks time. We have 2 companies that have Ryzen laptops. We're getting ready to have a 3rd company with a Ryzen laptop, and it's going to be a Ryzen. Let's see, the PC World, the Acer Nitro 5, and they're going to be using the Ryzen mobile laptop processor. That too is a machine that might be a good deal if you're looking at one of the older machines because of what they're getting ready to do. So be mindful of it and watch the technology. I thought it was curious. Another thing I've got up here, I've got a few testing tools. Some of the new processors that have been named and they were, I guess in effect, leaked, is this program Ada64. Anybody ever use Ada64? You can download an eval version, lets you look at your machine. You can look at the processor, chipset, tells you to certain things, and then they want you to buy the paid version. There was some information that was leaked because this program now detects those processors that aren't out yet. So that's how some think some of these new processors being announced. They think they know what the names are that Intel's coming out with. But anyway, I put a link up to Ada64 because we haven't talked about it in a long time. And because I was talking to Jeannie about this issue with, she's going to be teaching in China, I've got a link up to, again to Computer Reseller News and also to Network World. Network World, China to block SD-WAN and VPN traffic by January 11th. So I don't know how she's going to communicate with folks, and I hope this is state approved, but if she's talking through a VPN, it could be an issue. Do what?
Big China?
Well, that's what it says. Network World, China, the country, Beijing, China, is going to block SD-WAN and VPN traffic by January the 11th.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a no-no.
I think it is too, and I'm not quite sure what their motive is. I'm sure they'll get some.
The Chinese government.
Well, I'm sure they'll get some flack over it. And again, the Computer Reseller News, cutting-edge products. It's always curious to see different vendors take on different technologies. For example, you send 100 people to someplace like CES, and you get 100 different takes on what they think the best product was. Anyway, I've got a link up here for that. I've got the one up from, oh, and I like Dwayne sent this. We've mentioned this video editor before, but not in a long time. This video editor was how I found Red Shark News, and that was because of Mel Babb. Lightworks, and that was the video editor, and I didn't know that, and I appreciate Dwayne letting us know. That was the video editor that was used to do the movie Pulp Fiction. Any of you guys ever see Pulp Fiction? That's weird. That's a weird movie. I mean, that's a very weird movie. Oh, speaking of weird, that's Don B calling. I got a cousin in Dallas we're checking on, so his phone's been going out on him. Anyway, I got a link up on that. There is like 3 different versions of Lightwork. There's the free version, then there's a couple of paid versions. Once or twice a year, they do a 50% off. They've also got plugins that work with their software. It's a good program. That's how we found out about Red Shark, and Mel Babb is the one how I originally found out about that. And of course, then we went on to DaVinci Resolve, and I prefer it. Also, we got one up from Dwayne on PC Mag, News and Opinion, Chip's design flaw. And PC Mag also one I found, the white Dell XPS 13 runs 8th generation processor. Hexus, they're talking about the new Dell XPS 13, improved in every way. And there's another link, I believe it's Technology Trends, that has some information about the new Dells. And I've got a link up to the Register. We used to follow them. It's a site in the United Kingdom that talks about some of these issues with this Spectre. I've got a link up on that. And also, I've got a link straight into the Microsoft catalog for those that want to look. When you get there, you'll have to take that knowledge base article number and then look through the catalog and find it. And I would expect it would be different by the time you do. Ziff Davis Net, the meltdown of the Spectre updates. Some AMD PC owners post crash reports. Remember, it's not just people with an AMD processor. It's also affecting, they claim, Intel users that have an AMD video card. So I don't understand if this is a chipset issue. I don't understand. I know enough about it to be curious about it. Now, I've got a link up here in B&H Photo for an HP 17. This is a ProBook 470. It's a curious machine for the specs, and if somebody were looking for an HP machine specifically with those specs, that's why I put the link up.
Bill?
Yes, sir.
That AMD and Microsoft confusion, I read that AMD changed their chipset, their structure of the chipset without notifying Microsoft. And Microsoft built their patch around the system that they got the specs for, and they were not the same as the AMD final production model.
Interesting. That I didn't read.
That's what I read, and that Microsoft was getting with AMD to figure out a patch. But it was all to the chipset that AMD had given them the wrong information what the chipset was all about.
Interesting. If you've got a link to that article, can you send it to me? We'll get it up.
Okay, I'll look for it.
If you can find it?
Yeah, I'll look for it.
Okay, I appreciate it. Because like I said, there was another article I had on this that I wanted to share with you guys, and I couldn't find it if I don't do something with it right then, because there's so much information going on. I tried to look at the stuff that I thought today was relevant, because here we are coming over the first of the year with these 4 trade shows that are going on, the technology. It's like juggling. There's so much going on. So it's always an exciting time, especially now. And I've put up another link here to AMI. If anybody's interested in, well, let me go to it and I'll show you what it is. I'm going to hold down the control key, press enter, and this is going to take us into AMI's website. Multiple support options for BIOS Unified EFI products. Now, this claims to be for developers. There's a customer portal, but what we're going to look at for end users, multiple support options. I'm going to scream in on this a little bit. There we go. If you're trying to figure out information about your motherboard and you want to determine what you have on that motherboard, there's a motherboard ID tool, and there's some other options here you can look at. And if you click on that to download it, it'll ask you for a EULA, say yes, and you can get the file. But you can use that to interrogate your motherboard and get more information than probably you would otherwise. I put that link up because that's a tool. There's several tools. We haven't looked at it in a long time, but I put that link up because of, again, some of the questions that came up about this HP Envy. For example, if you looked at the video, there's a user that has asked about the display on here. And some of the questions he asked, I thought, well, if this were a $1,500 laptop, I agree. But the first question he asked was, whose display is this? And I thought, you know, that's interesting. When we do this with monitors, that's a big deal. But I don't remember anybody recently asking me that about a laptop. So I told him, I said, and I appreciate it. Good question, because I realized the more we learn, the more I realize how little I know. And the tool that we use, let me back out of this for just a minute while I digress. The tool we use always is that one from Taiwan, Monitor Info, Intech, and there's another Monitor Info program. But this will show me the manufacturer. I'll zoom back in on that. And that was the information he wanted. Now, the only way to know that is to have that software installed on that computer and pull that up. For example, if we were looking at Manolo's laptop, we could install this application, do the same thing, figure out whose panel that is. The other thing the individual was asking was I believe he asked for the part number. So I pulled that information from this file as well, and I used another program that doesn't install, it just runs, and save the information out as a text file. Because I thought it was curious. what I think he was looking to do was, he said, I watch movies a lot with my laptop. So I think what he's wanting to do, but he hadn't said it, is he wants to do a color match. Now, if you want to color match a monitor, you could do that with a laptop. There's two ways it can be done. If you know the brand and the model of your display, there's a site you can go to that will sell you that INF file for like $6. If you have a lot of computers to do, then you can do your own color match. Color Monkey or Spider. You know, we used to use a Spider back when we were at How PC, and I think we used it for 2 or 3 meetings, talked about it, didn't talk about it anymore. So it's the first time that question's come up in a very long time, so it made me start thinking about it. So I find it curious, because I told him, I said, well, you know, as you look at the display, this is an IPS, but it's glossy. If there's a reflection in the background, I can see that reflection. It's not a matte finish, but it's a decent display. Then I got to thinking about the luminance and the brightness, and again, that could be tested with one of these color devices. So I got to looking at the display and realized this is kind of a light, dull display. It's not as bright as I would expect it. For example, most all monitors, I have to turn them down because they're too bright. The last 2 monitors I looked at, an LG and that Dell, were plugged in, and they were perfect out of the box. This display, I might want to turn it up. I can't. I'm 1 click away from it being all the way up. So it really got me to thinking about what he was asking. Even though this is an $800 laptop, for the money, it's bang for the buck. You know, again, change one thing changes everything. The only way to know that is like Manolo, get the laptop, install the software, interrogate the machine, and then figure out what it is. Because these specs, the vendors don't tell you. Dwayne?
The new Dells, part of their technology on the 4K machine is they're adding a non-glare. Now I don't know how, you know, they've always had that on the regular 1080, but they're adding it this year on the 4K machine. So somehow, apparently it's a modified glare, but it cuts out, you know, the total reflect. And the other thing is they are putting some metal in the cooling section, which there's really not enough information to understand, but it sounds like it somehow is supposed to dissipate some of the heat off of the processor.
Oh, I saw that link you sent, and I think we put it up. It was some kind of a thermal gel like they use on the shuttle.
Right, right.
That looked pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be a big deal. Because another question came up about this, is it noisy? Well, what's your perception of noisy? This has a fan in it, so there is some noise. I don't notice it. I mean, I've got stuff over here that's running now that sounds like a hovercraft, but it's at a constant volume, and I don't let it vary, so I don't notice it, and you don't pick it up on the microphones. So, you know, what's your comparison? But anyway, I just found it curious, and I wanted to share with you about that laptop, and I'm glad you mentioned that cooling gel. However that's done, however they got hold of that stuff, I'm curious, because that looks like right now is going to be a Dell exclusive. By the way, you still in the market for a new laptop?
I am, and I think I'm going to go with the new Dell. They've redone the 15. They have the regular clamshell, and then they have the 2-in-1 where it folds. You can use it as a laptop. And
are you going to get one of those?
I'm seriously thinking about it. What they've done on the clamshell, they've gone to all USB-C ports, period.
All.
So you're really going to have to get a Thunderbolt port to plug into it to really use it. On the 2-in-1, one Thunderbolt, and the other 2 are USB 3.1, so I guess...
3.1A.
3.1A, yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
And so it's going to be interesting. I'm thinking about and you can also use it. They've developed a special Wacom pen to use with the 201 so that you can do the drawing and all of that.
You know, if you price a Wacom a tablet, it puts this in perspective that to get a 2-in-1 laptop that can use a Wacom stylus, that's, and you can do more than just that with it, that's a pretty big deal.
Right.
And we've been toying with this. This goes back, one time we went to Comdex. The original tablet was a 486 Ti processor. Do you guys remember that? There was a guy that went to Comdex who was trying to buy those up all he could because he was trying to refurbish them and regurgitate them into a new machine. And TI made the chip. It was a 486. It was a beautiful tablet. And it was the size of a notepad. Those were gone for about 10 years when that first came out. And it was a good 10 or 12 years before the idea came back. And now it's finally coming to fruition where it should be. It's funny how the technology takes time to come back around.
Another thing Dell is doing is coming up with this software, which they're releasing later this month for these machines, which will allow you to hook your phone into your laptop, and so your calls just come in over your laptop just like they're coming off the phone. And I know there are other variations of it, but this one is supposed to be particularly good.
Well, now, I've had 2 machines with a screen that pops up with a dialogue that says just to do that. The first one, I didn't do anything and it went away. The second one, I said no because I have a stupid phone. Wouldn't do me any good. But I find it quite curious that that's coming down the pike.
Yeah, apparently there are several. I think Microsoft already has something built into Windows, if I'm not mistaken, but
Well,
I haven't looked at it.
They were offering me that option. Yes, Jack. Where's the mic? It's coming. There you are. Other side. Thanks, Robert.
There was one I was reading about that allows you to slide your smartphone into a little pocket in the foreboard of the computer, and your smartphone becomes either a touchpad or a secondary screen.
Who makes it?
Don't remember.
If you come across it again, send me an email.
I don't know. I don't remember if that was just one of the Dell things or not, but.
Well, this whole thing with the phone, remember Microsoft came out with this Windows for phones, which is finally kind of fallen by the wayside. And about the only people that had it were Microsoft employees. And I don't think they liked it. So it's curious linking that up. You know, in a lot of ways it makes sense because you have your contact information. I remember we'd go to Comdex, we get card scan software, get all those business cards, you could scan them in. You go to card scan now and it's completely different. The whole thing's changed. It's working with smartphones. There's still some of us though that still use business cards, but I'm a stick in the mud.
All you do now is bump butts with the other phone, right?
Something like that. Yeah. I won't comment about that. Let me go back over to this laptop. Let me zoom out of this. So anyway, that's that program monitor asset manager, and I digress because I mentioned that because I got a link up to AMI. If you're interested in the Mother ID tool, you want to interrogate your machine. So we've got IDA64. We've got this program Mother ID tool from AMI, and then a couple of monitor tools I've got up here on the links. And I got several links in here to Tom's Hardware about the security flaw. And I mentioned Monitor Info View. That's the one from Nursoft that shows you the ED/ID information. It's pretty handy. And I've got a couple links up in here, one for X-Rite, if you're interested, monitor luminance versus brightness. And there was another link I was going to put up that I forgot, that if you wanted to just buy the INF profile, there's a company that if you know the brand and model of your display, you can buy that INF file to make the screen look better for movies or web design or whatever. And for $6, it's a pretty good deal. And I have the link up from Philip Tan from Reuters, and also from CRN, Computer Reseller News, the 10 most important product announcements. And I have a link right into the Microsoft Store about a Dell XPS 13. And I'm going to hold down the control key and go into that. I've never put a link up into the Microsoft Store, but the specs on this I thought were worth looking at. $1,400, $1,259 special price for students, parents, teachers, and military. Okay, this is an Intel i5 with 128 gig. If you notice, the most they've got is an i7 with 256 gig. It's a 13-inch screen, 8250 processor, 8 gigs of memory. And I believe this is one of those yeah, 10 hours and 31 minutes. You see, a lot of laptops don't necessarily give you the time, because I keep referring to that Asus Republic of Gamer Strix with the Ryzen processor, desktop. 1 hour on the battery. It's horrible, but it's got a desktop processor in it. Remember that technology that Intel came out with where they did a balance, where they could, and they're still doing it, where they neutered the CPU to get the battery life up? And then we started putting in SSDs so that with the spinning drive wasn't such an issue. Something to think about. Do you want a laptop with a long battery life? Do you want a laptop that boots fast? Do you want a laptop that's got a lot of processing power? What do you need the processing power for? Do you want 2 cores or 4 cores? My line is, if I'm going to buy a new laptop, I want 4 cores. I don't want 2 cores, whether it's a i5 or a i7.
Gil?
Yes, sir.
I found that article about Microsoft and AMD.
Oh, good.
Microsoft has reports of customers with some AMD devices getting into an unbootable state after installing the recent Windows operating system security update. After investigating, Microsoft has determined that some AMD device chipsets do not conform to the documentation previously provided to Microsoft to develop the Windows operating system migration to protect against chipset vulnerabilities.
Could you email me that link so we can put that up?
Sure.
That's relevant. Either address, either the G. Boyd or to the Fairhaven. And I'll get that
I
up.
found the article that combines your phone with the laptop. It's a Razer.
Razer?
Yeah.
Razer's doing some interesting things. Their laptops are a little expensive. Can you send me a link to that? We'll put it up.
I'm just trying to figure out how I can easily do that. I guess cut and paste it into an email, huh?
No, just, yeah, a good point. What browser are you using?
Chrome.
Okay, there's an extension, it's called MailTo.
Oh.
You just click on that and it will send it wherever you are.
There's another way, but you have to put some code in to make that button work, but that may be easier. So if you can grab the URL and send it to me, that'll be great. Okay, back over here to the talking points. I'm going to go into this and on Tom's Hardware, and I want to save some time for this. I'm going to hold down the control key. This is talking point number 4. And I want to also mention, and this is also on Tom's, there's a new motherboard manufacturer. You guys know how long it's been since we've seen a new motherboard manufacturer? We've had some new video card manufacturers, but it's been a long time. In fact, there's a lot of people that used to make motherboards that don't anymore. Y'all remember Tyan? Tyan motherboards? Remember Supermicro motherboards? Supermicro used to make desktop boards, now they're server boards. And there have been other vendors that have come and gone. Well, I'm going to get back over to this in just a second, but I want to mention this one. Have y'all ever heard of NZXT? NZXT makes stuff like coolers and things. They've come out with a new motherboard. Very curious. Technology looks pretty good on it. It's only Intel, but I'm glad to see somebody else in the game. Anyway, I'm going to go back to this first and about the prices lowered. AMD lowers prices on the Ryzen 7, 5, 3, and the Threadripper. Now, it's not all the Threadrippers, but I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to show you this graphic. And I'm going to see if we can zoom in on this. And it compares, showing the Intel, but we're just going to look at the desktop processor on the Ryzen. The Ryzen 7 1800X was $500, it's now $350. Lou has a Ryzen 7 1700X, and I said based on the price, I thought that was good enough for her, it's now $310. If I'm looking at building a machine, $310 versus $350, that's a $40 difference. Now, if somebody were asking me what I think they should build, bang for the buck, would be that 1700X. If somebody wants to build a machine, motherboards are pretty well set, and the motherboard price will be the same. but look at the money you can save on the processor. And that'll do bang for the buck for most people. Now, if somebody's going to build a Threadripper, I'd say go all the way because you're in a different category. But even that Threadripper, top of the line 1950 is $1,000. The i9 is twice that or better. But that price at $1,000 over the Christmas holidays and right after Thanksgiving, it was like a whole lot less than that. I think we saw some at $800. In some places I've seen it for $900, even on Amazon. But Micro Center had the best deal. If you bought that processor with a motherboard, not only did you save a couple $100 on the processor, but they also gave you another discount of like $50 off buying the motherboard at the same time. So, bang for the buck and high end. But I wanted to share that with you on Desktop Processor Update. If somebody wants to buy a laptop, now's a good time, even though new stuff's coming out. If somebody wants to build a computer, now's a good time to build a Ryzen, but if you're going to build a Threadripper, wait because there's a new chipset, which means new motherboards. And I'm hoping that's going to solve some of the problems we had. So I'm going to zoom back out of that. And again, this is on Tom's Hardware. It's always that kind of like who's on first, where we're going to be. Now, here in this article, it talks about AMD's adjusted price ensures the Ryzen lineup remains competitive against Coffee Lake until the new second generation Zen Plus processors come to market in April. AMD also has new X470 motherboards coming soon. Now, define coming soon. Could be a couple of months. But that's something to be watching out for. That's something to get excited about. And I had to share that with you. Now, digital trends. You know, one of the things we, first of all, let me back up. The most important thing with having a meeting like we do, we're very unique because we have a live meeting and we're doing something we've been doing for a long time. And I want to thank everybody for being here. Originally, when you looked at having a meeting, any place we went, like George R. Brown, Sheridan Astrodome, or those places, it was always about location, a location that can handle the crowd, or the crowd we anticipated. Then things changed and evolved, and it was about location was important, but then it was about internet access. Well, now it's not about internet access, it's about bandwidth. And by meeting here at Chapelwood, we have bandwidth. The wireless is one network. That's what you guys are on, which is Comcast. The wired network, I'm on fiber. I'm on AT&T fiber. We can stream 4K up here with the bandwidth we've got. So it's a blessing with what we're doing. But one thing we miss that we don't have here is we don't have a whiteboard. The whiteboard is a great teaching tool. It lets us write down our notes and gives us something we can emphasize while we're talking that we can refer to. We don't have that right now, and I think we need it. Now, I'm mentioning this and prefacing this because I'm going to go back over to Build or Buy to the links. And Digital Trends has a link up, and this is something coming up, I think, again from CES. Samsung wants to transform your whiteboard experience with the Samsung Flip. I'm going to hold down the control key. We'll bring up that link and take a look at it. Now, again, it's one of those kind of things, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. But nothing extraordinary really has happened with whiteboard technology in a very long time. At one time, there was a technology where you put the device on a white marker board, and so anything you did on that board transferred into the computer. This is the next evolution of that. We would benefit from just a dry marker board up here. So it's something to think about, but I wanted to share that with you. Technology that affects us affects everybody else. And then the last one I had up here was from Dwayne about the Wall Street Journal. AMD hits a snag over the patch for the chip flaw. So we're going to have two more links. One from Ben about this issue with AMD and Microsoft that kind of leaves you a little bit antsy. Remember, when we have a problem with our computers, we don't think logically, we think emotionally. So that's why we preface with this clone image and backup. Do this stuff ahead of time. Because it's like, oh my gosh, I've locked myself out of my car and where's my keys? It kind of leaves you feeling kind of hopeless. And when you're doing stuff, business or whatever, and you all of a sudden can't access your computer, you're freaking out, what's wrong? And then like Joe says, well, let me walk you through your clone imager backup. You don't have one? Click. So this is a time that emphasizes that even more. We all need to be mindful, clone image and backup. And I'm going to refer to that video we did with what I did with the HP. I'll redo that when we have another laptop to look at. Now, we're not going to be here next week. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Does anybody have any questions? Do y'all feel like you got your money's worth today? I want to thank everybody for your support. I appreciate your patience and your understanding. I think it's a blessing we get to do this. And I know some of you drive a long, long way off. I want to thank you for all that. It's neat we get to do this. Now, I'll have some videos up next week for those that are watching online, probably something on printers. We haven't talked about printers in a long time. A couple of printers I'm going to look at that I'll share with you. Also UPSs, we don't talk enough about that, about power protection. And I may do some stuff on cases. I remember years ago we had a bunch of cases lined up, and after I did that the last time I said I ain't doing that again. I'll do that at the house, put a video up so those that are interested in cases, and I'll show you some perspective on some things I'm looking at as I zoom in and zoom out. So, any questions? Folks, thanks for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. We look forward to seeing you next 2 weeks. Have a great day, and thanks for coming. Builder Buy is signing off.